Hi there, this video is my beginner's guide to choosing a lens. I received a suggestion from a subscriber asking if I could do a video helping beginners to choose a lens. Now we're in lockdown in England at the moment, so we can't go out and take pictures the same as we normally could, so I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to make that video. Whichever make of camera that you have, the amount of lenses that will be available for it is staggering, either from the manufacturer itself or from third parties. And without some kind of guidance, it can be really difficult to know what to choose. What difference is there between a £200 lens and a £4,000 lens? It's just absolutely mind-blowing when you first start to get into interchangeable lens cameras. So hopefully this video will help you to choose and help you just enjoy your photography. These are my lenses just here. Now it might seem like a lot, but it barely scratches the surface of what is available. When I first had a DSLR, I remember looking down lists and lists of lenses and just becoming absolutely bamboozled by the choice, not knowing what to go for first, not knowing whether spending more money would make any difference, and whether I really needed any of these lenses at all. So hopefully this video will answer some of those questions. Now, the first thing that you need to do when you get an interchangeable lens camera is forget about the lens. Now, that does seem like strange advice in a video about lenses, but really you need to start refining your camera technique. I've seen lots of people with really high-end kit who don't know how to use it and still end up taking bad pictures and blame it on the equipment, when really it's because they don't know how to use that equipment properly. So spend some time getting used to your camera and knowing how to work the functions. When you first buy an interchangeable lens camera, you'll probably get a lens with it as part of a kit, and for that reason they're usually called kit lenses. Kit lenses are usually quite basic and quite cheap to try and keep the cost of the system down, but you can still get some really good images from a kit lens. It doesn't mean just because it's a cheap lens it's going to be a bad lens, and for a lot of people it might be the only lens you need. So ask yourself these three simple questions. Are you happy with the shots that you're getting at the moment? When you look at the pictures that you get out of the camera, do you notice any problems? If not, then you probably have the right lens for you at the moment. Second, where are you actually going to use these images? Are they just going to be pictures of the grandkids that maybe go on social media, maybe get printed out to 6x4, or maybe even just sit on your computer? If so, you're not really going to notice the improved quality of more expensive lenses. So again, you probably have the right lens at the moment. Thirdly though, there may be images that you're trying to take that your equipment is preventing you from getting. It might be an effect that you're trying to achieve, like a blurred background that you can't do, or you might be trying to get closer to your subject and the length of your lens doesn't allow this to happen. So this might be the opportunity where you start to think about upgrading your lens. When you start to become more serious about photography, either as a hobbyist or a professional, then you will start to notice the limitations of a kit lens. The piece of glass that you put on the front of a camera makes much more difference to the quality of an image than the camera itself. So there are several factors to consider when upgrading a lens, and probably the first is the sharpness that you're going to get from that lens. You will notice when you zoom in on the cheaper lenses that the edges of objects don't seem as crisp as the ones that you get from the more expensive versions, and sharpness does become a kind of obsession as you get more serious, and more expensive lenses definitely do provide more sharpness. Next is going to be focal length, and focal length is measured in millimeters, and it's the distance between the optical center of the lens to the camera's sensor. It's determined with the camera focused to infinity, but it's not the physical length of the lens. Lenses tend to be named by their focal length, and this can be found on the barrel. For example, a 50mm lens has a focal length of 50mm. Focal length determines how much of the scene the camera records. A short focal length is known as a wide angle. Somewhere between 10 and 20mm is common and will capture a lot of the scene, which is useful for images such as landscapes. A longer focal length magnifies the subject, making it bigger in the frame, and these are known as telephoto lenses and have focal lengths upwards of about 85mm. These are useful for such things as wildlife when you can't get close to the subject. Next is a maximum aperture, and this can be found on the lens, usually starting with an F followed by a number. This tells you the widest aperture that the lens will open to. The aperture is one of the controls that the photographer uses to alter the amount of light that enters the camera. It works the same as the iris on your eye by opening and closing. Having a wide aperture can really help in low lighting conditions. Basically, you've got a bigger hole that lets more light into the camera, and that can really help with exposures in low lighting conditions. Also, it can help with the speed of focusing, because the way that a camera works is it will focus with the camera aperture set to its maximum to get the most light in, so it attains the focus lock quicker, and then what it will do is it will close down the aperture when you take the actual shot. So this can really improve the focusing speed. And also, a wide aperture can help blur backgrounds. I'll put a link up here to a video that I made on how to blur the backgrounds in your photos. Next, you need to decide whether you go for a zoom lens like this one that can zoom in and out. Now this has the benefits of being a great all-rounder, or whether you go for a fixed lens, also known as a prime lens. Now this just has one focal length, but it does have benefits that I'll discuss later. Also, just consider that some lenses do have image stabilization built into them, so this can really help to get sharper images. So you've considered all of these factors and you've decided that yes, it is time to upgrade your lens. Now, one thing to be very wary of, if you've never bought a new lens, is that not every lens will fit your camera. Every manufacturer has their own mounting system. And so, for instance, a Canon lens will not fit a Nikon camera and vice versa. Now, you can buy adapters, but generally speaking, it's better to get a lens mount that is designed for your camera. Next, you need to decide on the manufacturer of the lens that you choose. Now, you can go for the same manufacturer as your camera. So, for instance, put a Nikon lens with a Nikon camera, and these are usually fairly trustworthy and are good quality, but they're not the only thing that you can buy by any means. There are other manufacturers, and noteworthy manufacturers are Tamron and Sigma. They make some good quality lenses, but they're not the only ones by a long way. You can get other manufacturers that offer cheap lenses, but just beware that usually you get what you pay for. So in my opinion, the first type of lens that you should go for when you make your first upgrade is a good quality zoom lens. And basically a zoom lens gives you lots of flexibility because you've got a range of focal lengths. It seems a bit crude talking about price when it comes to lenses, but the amount you pay really does affect the quality of the lens that you get. You cannot expect to spend £200 or £300 on a lens and get good quality. A ballpark figure is somewhere between £750 and £1,000 to start getting good quality, and you can pay more than that. Price is only an indication. There's more important technical details to consider when choosing a lens, and the first thing is going to be the F number. That is the maximum aperture that the lens will open to. Now, the smaller the number, the wider the maximum aperture, which is a little bit counterintuitive. There is a reason, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Some of the cheaper lenses may have 2 F numbers, and this one, which is my first kit lens, has 2 F numbers, and it goes from 3.5 to 4.5. And what that means is when the lens is zoomed right the way out, at its widest, the maximum aperture is 3.5, but when I zoom the lens in, then the maximum aperture decreases to 4.5, so the hole is actually smaller when it's zoomed in than when it's zoomed all the way out. More expensive lenses such as this one, as you zoom in, firstly you'll notice the barrel doesn't come in and out, but it has a maximum aperture of 2.8 all the way through the zoom range from 70mm to 200mm. Really good tip. before you do plunge and buy that first lens is look at reviews. See what other people think who own that lens. If you buy from a reputable dealer, they'll have reputable reviews on their sites that you can trust. I've got 4 zoom lenses that I use regularly, but this is by far my favourite. It sits on my D850 most of the time, and the reason for that is it's really versatile. It's got a zoom range of 24mm to 120mm, so it gives me the option to take wide angle shots, but also zoom in and get details that I can pick out. It's got a maximum aperture of f4 all the way through the zoom range, so it's good at fast focusing and letting light in when I need it. Now it does cost over £1,000, it's £1,079 at this point, so it's not the cheapest, but it's not the most expensive either, but I do get really good quality images from it. A significant step up is this lens. Now this is a 70 to 200mm lens, but it's got a maximum aperture of f2.8 all the way through the zoom range. Now it's a really high quality lens and it's nearly £2,000, but the images that you get are really sharp and are second to none. If you've seen any of my bird videos, you will have seen me use this lens. It's 200mm to 500mm, so it allows me to zoom in to the birds. Even though they may be far away, I can still get them quite large in the frame. It's 5.6 all the way through the zoom range. Now it's not a budget lens by any means at £1,250, but it's not anywhere near as expensive as you can pay for some wildlife lenses. They'll make your knees knock. The final zoom lens I've got sits on my new mirrorless camera, and now I'm still getting used to that, so I'm not going to mention it a lot in this video. So with these 3 lenses, I've managed to cover all the focal lengths from 24mm all the way up to 500mm without any gaps. So whatever the photography project I've got a lens that will suit it. Once you've covered all the focal lengths you're likely to require, then you can start thinking about more specialist lenses. These tend to be fixed length lenses and are also known as prime lenses. Now, they only have one focal length, so if you want to make the image bigger or smaller in the frame, you've got to physically get closer or further away from it. But the advantages of these lenses is because they are simpler, they haven't got the zoom capabilities, they need less elements inside that can be of a higher quality, so they've not got as much to go wrong. They can be built to a higher spec, so they're often sharper, and they also generally have a larger maximum aperture. The first prime lens that I bought was this 50mm prime lens. Now the advantage of this is it's really, really sharp. It gives a view very, very similar to what your eye sees, but it's got a maximum aperture of 1.8. which is really, really wide. It lets in lots of light, so it's good in low light conditions, but it's also really great for creating blurred backgrounds. The next specialist lens I got was this macro lens, which is at 105mm and has a maximum aperture of 2.8. Macro photography is the art of making small images look life-size or larger. It can render tiny objects with incredible detail, not possible with the naked eye or standard lenses. Also, with this kind of lens, you can get the subject much closer to the front of the lens and still be able to focus. Finally, I have this 20mm lens, which has a maximum aperture of f1.8. Now, I got this specifically for taking nighttime shots. When I went to Iceland a few years ago, I didn't have the right lens for taking pictures of the aurora and stars, and really I could have done with this lens then. It would have been really, really useful. So for nighttime photography or astrophotography, because it's got such a wide view and a large maximum aperture, it really makes it very well suited for that kind of photography. The next lens that I'm likely to buy will probably be a Z-mount lens for my mirrorless camera. I'll have to look at the current lenses I've got to see if there's any gaps. I know definitely I've got a gap at the very, very wide end of my lenses, but I'll have to consider the Z-mount lenses and see if upgrading any of my existing lenses are worthwhile to get the Z-mount instead. I hope you found this video useful and that I've demystified the minefield that is choosing a lens. If I have, don't forget to let me know down below in the comments. But to sum up, bear in mind that you get what you pay for with a lens, so choose the best that you can afford, but only buy what you are definitely going to need. Don't go for a 500mm lens to start with if you're only going to take pictures of people at parties. Also, it's really important to note that I didn't buy these lenses all in one go. I built them up over a period of about 10 years. And so it may seem daunting that I've got a lot of expensive equipment here, but they're all bought at different times when I could afford them. So that's worth remembering as well. And finally, the best equipment in the world is not going to make you a brilliant photographer. That only comes from experience and practice. Go ahead and check out my Instagram, that's @DOakdenPhotography. There you can see lots of my pictures, some that you won't see in videos. You can also message me there and down below in the comments. Don't forget to click like, subscribe and the bell notifications. Check out next week's video, that goes live at 4 o'clock on Sunday. But all that's left now is to say, stay safe and I'll see you soon. You can still say oh, was it close? The piece of glass that you put on the also zoom in to 200.